army of my countrymen, here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do without freedom? Will you fight?
Fight against that? No! We will run.
And we will live. Die. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
You ready? Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, yo. This is 10% luck.
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Before we really get into some latest news, one thing that I and others and other hosts on this network, listeners on this network, have rallied against is the war on drugs. It's something that many of us are very, very much against, seeing that it tends to do more harm than good and really abridges upon people's rights. So there was a speech that Stefan Molyneux made. It was at I think it was World Affairs Conference at Upper Canada College, and it's from February. And I'm going to start off with this. The arguments he makes, really listen closely to the arguments, and really, I think many of the listeners out there have a pretty good understanding on really what the war on drugs is. But for those who don't, maybe new listeners or anything out there, really the inefficiency and the hypocrisy of it. And I'll let you be the judge, but here it is, Stefan Molyneux, ending the war on drugs with compassion. We're having audio issues, so give me a second here. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what is going on here. Okay, let me try to figure this out. Okay, since that isn't working, let me, go ahead and cover this first article. Court okays barring high IQs for cops. And this is actually, from New London in Connecticut in September 8th of 2000. And, this was out of ABC News. And lately, I've been seeing, probably at least about 2 articles or 2 videos or, the mix between the two of some type of police corruption. People are like, why is it just so high? This article from 2000, court okays barring high IQs for cops. Says here a man whose bid to become a police officer was rejected after he scored too high on an intelligence test has lost an appeal in his federal lawsuit against the city. The second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New York upheld a lower court's decision that the city did not discriminate against Robert Jordan because the same standards were applied to everyone who took the test. And what basically they did is they claimed that, well, it's because people with too high of IQs don't tend to stay with the force. Therefore, it's turnover is why they do it. Because, well, they won't stay with the force. I wonder why people with high IQs might not want to stick around in a police force. Or sometimes you've noticed that they do get bullied out of the police force. They get shunned, basically, forced to resign because, well, maybe, just maybe, they might see a problem with what's going on in the corrupt police forces around America. People with high IQs just are not going to really tolerate dumb crap. There's a lot of people out there that I've known that they wanted to, be a part of the law enforcement agencies and stuff when they were younger, and then they had a few run-ins with law enforcement, and it completely changed how they looked at law enforcement. And, well, people that might have a higher intelligence that might see corruption as a bad thing might tend to not last too long in a corrupt system. I really think that's what we have. And, give me a second here. Okay. It's one of those things that people with the lower IQs might tend to just follow the rules because they think, well, those other people just know better. And usually that's not the case. You get used as a pawn. And a lot of the law enforcement, it's not that they're dumb. It's just that maybe they haven't gone as far down the rabbit hole. They haven't really looked too far beyond. They've just been really passive and just went through life as nothing's wrong. Other than those bad, nasty, pot smokers. It's a system, and that's why you see a lot of corruption. I have some other articles that I'm going to get into later. And, when you really want to look at a lot of these people that are higher up, whether it be in these big corporatist corporations or, the socialist government, fascist government, whatever you want to call it, it's all corrupted to me. I just came across the article, and this was in Business Insider. And it's Larry Page, which is the CEO of Google. He said, I would rather give my billions to Elon Musk than charity. It says here, Google CEO Larry Page has an unusual idea about what should happen to his billions should he die. Instead of giving it to a philanthropy organization, he'd rather hand over his cash to Elon Musk the founder of Tesla, SpaceX, and Solar City. In a conversation with Charlie Rose at a TED conference on Wednesday, Page said he wanted his money going to capitalists like Musk, those with big ideas for changing the world, according to a report at Wired. He thinks Musk's vision for going to Mars to back up humanity is inspired. He said that's a company that's philanthropical. According to some people on Twitter, Page even went as far as to suggest that everyone give their money to a corporation that was trying to accomplish big stuff. And I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but when you look at this, you go, well, yeah, these big companies that have the abilities to create. But the problem we have is, well, you give it to all these just big corporatists that really they're monopolists. Yes, it's a regulated monopoly, basically how the government likes to put it. You get the choice between 3 companies or 4 companies. That's not a free market. The problem is regulation for the most part. And when you go, well, let's not do philanthropy because, screw the people that are suffering right now because the future could be greater. Yeah, that's basically what they're saying. And then what they create out of that is only limited to those companies' ideas. And with as many people on the earth that there is, and knowledge in different fields, and ideas floating out there, if you had that cash dispersed between more smaller companies, probably could have a lot more different ideas coming out. A lot more different opportunities. You wouldn't have such small control over technology, which the expanses for technology are great, but with how many little people we have, not so much. You got your few companies that really have control over technology, and it's not as expansive and as free for everyone. So, give me a second here. We're gonna, get this clip playing. Hello, JJ. I can barely hear you.
You can barely hear me?
Yep. Could be from my end too.
Maybe. How's that?
That's better. Okay. Thanks for being willing to play this clip for me here.
No problem.
Not sure what's going on this end, so.
What I'll do is oh, there we go. Now you can hear me, huh?
Yeah.
All right, I'll start the clip, and then at 6:30 we're gonna be going on Mark's show, but I'm calling in on the phone, so, I'll leave it running on the computer for you.
Okay, cool.
I will be here, so when it ends, I can shut it off.
Okay, cool.
All right?
Yep, thanks.
All right, no problem. Hit play.
Yep.
You set it up?
Huh?
Did you set it up?
I thought you were going to hit play.
Okay, I did, but did you set the video up? Stefan Molyneux, did you tell everybody what they were going to listen to?
Yeah, ending the war on drugs. This is
right.
a previous clip that we were trying to play.
Okay, here goes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can you hear him?
Yeah. It's my first time,
Okay.
I think, giving a
I'm gonna
speech
mute.
with pews and a pipe organ. So I feel faith healing is in order. I think that's how we're going to start the day. So is anyone here afflicted with a noble love of the state? Come on up. So this morning we're going to talk a little bit about the drug war. And I mulled it over quite a bit. I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to waste it telling you why I'm going to talk about what I'm talking about. But I sort of mulled it over a bit. Because there is an argument which is the non-aggression principle, do not initiate force against other people. The use of drugs does not. Has anyone here ever liked a musician who they suspect may have composed or performed under the influence? Anyone? All right. So for those who can't see the audience, that's no one. No one at all. So, I'm a Pink Floyd guy, so for me it's kind of tough. I like Bohemian Rhapsody, Freddie Mercury composed after he was introduced to a weak plant called cocaine. So it's tough for me to sort of come down hard against it. So there's a moral argument which says that if you do not initiate force against others, you're not doing anything wrong fundamentally. It may be unwise, but it's not immoral. And so if I stab myself, nobody charges me with assault. And if I ingest a drug that may not be great for me in the long term, but enhances my happiness in the moment, maybe something worthy of intervention. It may be unwise, but it's not immoral and worthy of jail. There's an old saying from Confucius says the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper names. The war on drugs is not the proper name. It's not a war on drugs. If I get caught with a pound of cocaine, it's not the cocaine that goes to jail. It's not a war on drugs. It's a war on people. And it's a war on a very specific kind of person. No drug the world over throughout history has ever been shown to be innately addictive. I think we can all agree that it's really the addicts who, the shoplifters, the thieves, the people who wreck their lives and the lives of those around them. It's really the addiction that is the problem. A guy who watches The Wizard of Oz while listening to Dark Side of the Moon on Saturday night with a joint is probably not worth motivating hundreds of billions of dollars of the military-industrial complex to go through his window with a tank. It's the addicts. So who are the addicts? The addicts, to put it very briefly, are people whose brain has been harmed by a specific set of circumstances, and the addicts of opiates and of stimulants like cocaine are attempting to self-medicate a very specific brain problem. Well, we're all born too early. A horse can run its first day out of its mother's womb. Human beings take like 2 years. And we're born early because we have these giant heads. It's not just me, it's others. We have these giant heads, and we're born like 8 minutes before our heads get too big to fit through our mother's hoo-hoo. That's Latin. You guys speak Latin, right? UCC. And so we're born too early, and so the majority of our brain development occurs after we're born. And there are very specific systems in the brain around emotional self-regulation. And so we need motivation, which comes from the dopamine system. And we need self-soothing or calming down, which comes from the endorphin system. Now, if you take a rat and you genetically engineer it to have no dopamine, then if you feed it, you put food in its mouth, it will be like, hey, thanks. But if you put food like 2 inches from its mouth, it will not move to get it. It will actually starve to death 2 inches from food because it has no motivation. So you can genetically engineer problems in these stimulation and self-soothing systems within the brain and see very specifically what happens. And when baby monkeys are groomed by their moms, they produce more endorphins, the happy warm hugs and all that kind of stuff. Now, if when you are both in your mother's womb and shortly after birth for the first couple of years, if you're exposed to extraordinary stressors in life, it could be war, it could be child abuse, it could be famine, it could be disease, it could be, the general social decay that's hitting so many Western cities in certain places. If after you're born, you experience extraordinary stressors, these systems do not work well. You are short on dopamine and you are short on endorphins. So if you are exposed to these in an external way, right, if you are exposed to any drugs which boost endorphin levels, the opiates, or if you're exposed to drugs which improve your dopamine levels, you feel normal for the first time in your life. Right? Most people with sort of happiness is up around here, right? People who are born in traumatic situations, their happiness is down here. They take a drug, an illegal drug, and they realize, they feel what it means to be normally happy for the first time in their life. And then when they go back down, and they go back down lower than where they came from, they realize the agony of their existence probably for the first time. So what do? They want to get back to that. Do you know that the brain does not distinguish between physical and emotional pain? It's exactly the same centers that light up. A really painful rejection is processed by the brain in the same way as getting stabbed. So these people who've grown up in these traumatic environments have a susceptibility. This is where the addiction comes from. Their brains don't work. You could really look at it as a physical brain injury. Now, people who are attempting to self-medicate a physical brain injury should not be sent to jail at all. There is a sadism in the war on drugs in that we are finding people who were traumatized as children, who are self-medicating themselves the only way they know how, the only way they can, and we are subjecting them to persecution, confinement, trauma, stress, which is exactly the conditions which brought about their susceptibility to addiction in the first place. That is, I would argue, morally revolting. People who are attempting to self-medicate for brain injuries sustained as children should be given our support, our sympathy, our help. It is a medical problem. We do not throw people in jail for being in a wheelchair. And if we made wheelchairs illegal and people had to barter and steal to get them, would we then be justified in throwing those people in jail because you obtained your wheelchair illegally? And therefore you are a criminal. Come on, we gotta do better than that as a society. We have to be more warm-hearted than that as a society. It is a medical problem. There is no evidence that it's purely genetic. And genetic means nothing because genes are switched on and off by the environment. We are, in many ways, genetically the vessel, like we are the water poured into a vessel. We take the shape of the vessel of our early experiences. So, people who've been victimized as children and who are attempting to self-medicate, there's a physician out of Vancouver, Gabor Mate, who's worked for 12 years with some of the most egregiously addicted people. So he says, for instance, that in his entire 12 years of dealing with female addicts, he's never met one, not one, in 12 years, who was not raped as a child. He has never met a man who is an addict who did not go through either child molestation, rape, or other forms of egregious child abuse. It's not a mystery as to why these people are in such agony that is identical in the brain to physical pain, and that they're using opiates and stimulants to replace that which their environment has robbed from them. It is a brain injury. No different from if somebody breaks your arm. It's a medical problem. It's a problem of compassion. And taking these people, hounding them, pursuing them, forcing them into a life of crime. Do you know that the markup for a pound of coffee from farmer to my belly is 400%. Anyone want to guess what it is for heroin? Actually don't, because if you know this, people will ask you questions. Coffee's okay, but no, the markup for heroin is 15,000% from farmer to, tragically, Philip Seymour Hoffman. People like that who die. No, it's the guy died with 50 hits of heroin in his room. The man was looking for a long weekend of non-oblivion. And he had a difficult history. So, I mean, these things can be fixed. The beautiful thing about the brain is, you know, you lose your arm, it doesn't regrow, but a brain is like It's like the tail of a lizard. It actually regrows. You can change it. There's neuroplasticity, which means you can reprogram. You can change your brain. But these people are dealing with a medical injury which needs our compassion. This has been shown repeatedly. Portugal, decriminalized drug use over 10 years ago. Have you read about it much? No. Because we're in the middle of a medieval witch hunt. We're in the middle of persecuting the persecuted, of attacking victims. Weren't you always told, don't blame the victim? When you were growing up, don't attack the victim, don't blame the victim. People who are self-medicating through opiates and through stimulants are self-medicating. How can we persecute them when they are the victims of horrendous childhood experiences? And you can, don't take my word for it. You can go and look all this stuff up. I'm no doctor, but this is as far as I understand. And I've actually interviewed Gabor Mate on my show, and this stuff is all very clear. So, of course, medicating yourself with drugs, maybe it's unwise. I've never tried them myself, so, I'm a caffeine guy myself. Maybe it's unwise. I don't know. Some people have done some really cool stuff. Anybody here like Sgt. Pepper's when you go through your parents' album collection? I wish I knew. I don't know. Who are the cool new bands who do drugs? I don't know. But there's a lot of creativity in it. A lot of great poetry. It's been not a lot of great music. I'm not a fan of it myself. I think it's an unwise thing to do, but I totally understand the medical reason why people are doing it. It's easy to recreate these brain injuries in laboratory animals. Easy to measure what happens. If you take away dopamine from a baby monkey, when the mother leaves, it doesn't even cry out. When the mother is absent from its life, first thing that a healthy baby monkey does is cry out. Because it needs its mother for protection, survival, milk, and cuddling, and all that kind of good stuff. They don't even bother to do that. They grow up dopamine short, endorphin short, serotonin short. The brains are a gaping wound opened by traumatic histories. If somebody has a brain tumor and does something wrong, we don't throw that person in jail. We understand that the brain was negatively affected by the tumor, and we treat that person. We do not throw that person in jail. How is it different for very clear medical injuries that just aren't quite as obvious to the eye? It's all these libertarian questions, like a man's dying of thirst, he steals water. Is that wrong? Well, these people are in genuine physical agony, and they are taking some medication because we've made it so illegal that they have to steal 10 times its value to pay for the habit. Let's do better. Let's show compassion where there was trauma. Thank you.
We're going to have a 3-minute rebuttal from each member of this panel, so Mr. Bonner,
All right. So I'm talking about principles, moral principles. The initiation of the use of force against people voluntarily engaged in trade is immoral. And I'm talking about all illicit substances, and we have people here talking about heavily regulating marijuana. That is not an answer. I don't know if you guys know, I'm an anarchist. Which totally makes me wish I was just gay. No, like if I was gay, look, I got the accent, right? So that's not hard. I can do the gestures. I went to theater school. We're not far off. If I was gay and say, oh, I'm gay, people would say, oh, that's great. Here's an ABBA CD, some potpourri, and some assless chaps. To which I'd say, good tunes, that smells nice, and sorry, I'm over 40, my ass can't cut it anymore. But, an anarchist basically says that the initiation of force is immoral. Government is a violation of the initiation of force. And all you're going to do if you regulate is maintain the profits for black market activities. Look, if you want to get people out of an industry, drive down the profits. The government tomorrow passed a law saying that profiting from coffee was illegal. They'd be smoking economic craters where Starbucks, Timothy's, and Tim Hortons would be. So the way that you drive profits down in a business which puts capital elsewhere is you make it as open a market as possible, as free a market as possible. That drives down profits. You can still get illegal cigarettes in Canada, illegal booze, because once you start regulating things, you keep the profit margins high for criminal activities. And I mean, if you try, I mean, this is madness. Oh, well, we'll limit the drugs to this concentration or that concentration. Nonsense. I mean, one of the reasons why drugs are so prevalent right now is it's so profitable to get people hooked on them that you find vulnerable members of the population and you give them free samples until they're hooked, and then you profit off it. The more the profit is in the business, the more it will be given to people who shouldn't receive it or who should only receive it under the care of a doctor. So the idea that, well, we're going to grudgingly regulate and hyper-regulate one small substance, no. If you are buying drugs from someone and you are ingesting them yourself, there's no complainant. This is a fundamental aspect to the rise of the state. No complainant. I mean, if I rip you off, sell you a car and it doesn't work, you can go to the government and we broke contract, then you have a complainant. But there's no complainant. The government has to get in your face. It has to get intrusive. It has to stop pursuing people who have no complaint against each other. That's not going to change if we legalize. So, yeah, I go on principle. Let's not initiate force against anyone.
So, now we're going to open the floor to 10 minutes of questions, but if you have a question, please direct it towards one speaker from all of you. Speaking
do you think that the government legalization of marijuana will help reduce the amount of people who move on to harder drugs by limiting the pressure of drug dealers, or increase it by normalizing drug use?
Who's that for? Who's that for?
Everyone.
Oh. Go ahead.
You can only choose one? Okay, Mr. Neary.
Yeah, I mean, there's no evidence to show that marijuana use is a gateway drug. I mean, that's something that's often used out there in the comments, but there's no evidence that proves that. So, again, I think, you know, if it's going to be regulated, they've got to put all those things into place. And I do believe that a good system will go a long way in taking the criminal factor, you know, out of, you know, the current system that we have now.
And just to be clear, marijuana is a gateway drug for Doritos.
All right, so this first, I'd like to thank everyone for being here with us today. So this question is directed towards Mr. Molyneux. You're the legalization and the regulation of all illicit substances. Are you for age restriction, or is that considered part of regulation in your opinion?
Well, look, I mean, drug problems in the future are going to be as relevant as polio is today, or smallpox. We have inoculations against these illnesses, so they're not a big problem in society. When we start treating infants and children better, not abusing them, not harming them, when we stop raping children as a society, which is not everyone, of course, right, but it's still a significant problem, we're not going to need to worry about drugs. We just don't, I mean, do you buy insurance against demonic possession these days? No, because we don't generally believe in it, and it doesn't obviously happen. So as far as age restriction goes, I think we're not going to need to worry about people's addictions to drugs. I don't believe that there's a central coercive agency that can tell people what to put in their bodies. Raise your children right, they won't even be tempted. That's the solution in my book.
Thank you.
This question is also directed to Mr. Molyneux. Do you not agree that the policies set forth by the government, and the government as a body in itself, acts as a pool of knowledge to prevent people from going into drugs? Because people who use drugs start off in a catch-22 position, where by the time they experiment with it, they're in a state of irrationality and can't decide whether or not rational to use that drug or not. Therefore, you have to prevent them from using it in the first place.
Governments do not prevent young people from using drugs. Government pays for and enforces young children using drugs. Anybody ever heard about SSRIs, antidepressants, ADHD medications, and so on? In the United States, you as a family will get paid for putting your children on these drugs. The long-term health effects have never been studied. 1 in 10 children in America, boys in America, diagnosed with ADHD. Legal prescription drugs kill far more people than illegal drugs. Putting drugs in the hands of government is like, as P.G. O'Rourke said, giving whiskey and car keys to a 14-year-old boy. It's not a place where you put responsibility in the monopoly of force.
This question is also Yeah, okay. You talked about as a solution just ending like children being raped. And of course, if we could do that, we absolutely would. And I don't think there's any disagreement with anyone in this room that we would stop raping children if we could. So with the idea that everyone is working to stop these sort of traumatizations and working to stop the things that lead to these sort of addictions, what would you say is a solution for people who have these sort of addictions and have these dopamine deficiencies, aside from just getting hooked on it?
Well, you give them the sympathy that they only get from drugs. There's a woman who described her first hit of heroin as a soft, warm hug. You give people the empathy socially that they can only get chemically, and that will start to change their brain. You know, our brains develop socially. We're not these objectivist, isolated people. And if you give people sympathy and understanding for prior trauma, their bodies begin to produce this stuff. You can biochemically change people by being nice to them. It's an incredible but fairly well-established medical fact. So once we start to accept that they're self-medicating for prior trauma, give them the sympathy and understanding and compassion that they need, we can begin to transition them to the beneficial drug of love as opposed to the biochemical drug of opiates.
Good morning. I also have a question for Mrs. Swan. I wanted to ask that one of the speakers just mentioned that different drugs lead to problems, medical problems, and I want to mention that there are also some problems that society faces. Under the effects of drugs, people do crimes, not big ones, but they do crimes. So is this the only way that you can deal with your stress and with your depression? Because I know other ways that it helps. Is that the only way that you can overcome that, or is this?
No, I mean, as far as I understand it, there are ways of getting people off drugs. I mean, obviously, they steal because it's so expensive. So if you have a $3,000 a month cocaine habit, not you particularly, the guy behind you, but if you have because he's got a beard, right? And anyone here with a soul patch, we got your eyes on you. But if you have, do you know how much you have to steal every month to support a $3,000 a month cocaine habit? Is $30,000, because stolen goods are marked down 90%. So we're driving people into a life of crime by making it illegal. There was no organized crime other than the federal government in the United States prior to Prohibition. It all came over with that. 40% of the profits of organized crime come directly from drugs. So you make it legal and you can actually help people rather than continuing to persecute the persecuted, as I mentioned. So there are definite intervention therapies. Gabor Mate has tried working with a native drug from South America to get people off addiction. He was immediately shut down by the government, despite very promising results. Look, the government doesn't care about you fundamentally. Have you heard about a thing called the national debt, where you're forced into crappy public schools against your will? Well, maybe not you people. But a lot of people are, right? So they don't fundamentally care about you, otherwise you wouldn't be born $150,000 in debt.
I was wondering, you talked about how a lot of these people that are addicted to these hard drugs have gone through traumatic past and whatnot. Do you think it's, smart, even sane, to give them more means to put them at an even lower level? You give them these drugs that they get addicted to, that screw up their lives completely, and so you make them even more vulnerable, and they harm themselves even more. Don't you think it's the government's responsibility to minimize self-harm, just like we don't allow suicide to happen?
Well, okay, that's a big question, and we're short on time. Obviously, what we're doing now is causing far more harm. Look, if throwing people in jail or hounding them or whatever made them stop using drugs, we're saying that negative consequences will stop people from doing drugs. The negative consequences of being a drug addict are so unbelievably horrible. HIV, hepatitis, you lose your teeth, you lose your beauty, your youth, you're just a mess. So negative consequences don't stop this kind of stuff. There's ways of transitioning people into a better environment, but that requires an open understanding of and sympathy and compassion for people who have spent their whole lives being spat upon, beaten, and raped. So no, of course we treat people who are traumatized with kindness. You kind of have to do the opposite to help people. You don't hit someone with a broken arm with a pipe. So the opposite of what they've experienced is the best chance they have for recovery. I'm sorry, I know it's totally unfair I get the last word, because I know you've got more to say, but we are short on time.
Thank you.
I do want to take issue with one of the things Stefan said, though. I do not want. I don't think you should see the picture of the addict as, which is a word we don't use, because I'm a person. I'm not an addict. I might have an addiction. I might have all sorts of other problems too, but I'm a person first. And I know Gabor Mate, and he's a great guy. But I think you have to look at beyond trauma. I think a number of the people, many people in this room are as susceptible to addiction. It might not be drugs. It might be computers. It might be sex. It might be shopping. It might be iPhones. It might be, so the idea of addiction just coming from the trauma of childhood is not something, it's a contentious idea and a powerful idea, and it applies to a lot of people. But people in this room, whether they feel they've been traumatized or not, are still susceptible to going down a pathway very negative addictions to a whole range of things. And because of the war on drugs, we focus on drugs way too much.
Let me just make one last point then. It's true, there's lots of addictions and so on. And the majority of people who are traumatized don't become drug addicts, but the numbers are very clear. According to wide statistical studies coming out of Kaiser Permanente in the States, if you experience significant trauma as a child, you are 46 times more likely to become a drug addict. 46 times more likely. So if we have better childhoods, the chance of drug addiction goes down by a factor of about 46 times. That basically eliminates the problem as far as it can be eliminated. Sorry.
Okay, that was the end of the
Good
clip.
evening, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Stefan Molyneux from Freedom Main Radio, supplementary show. 27th.
We'll go ahead and...
Sorry to the people we didn't get to last night. Had a few technical...
Hang up on JJ there. Now, you know, one thing there at the end, when, they were talking about addiction, and, the one gentleman made the, point that, you know, well, you know, it doesn't always have to be, you know, dealing with, you know, drugs. You know, there's other types of addictions, you know, people that shop or, well, you do have to look at every addiction. Usually there is something in your childhood and, younger years that contribute to the way you are. And addictions are usually a result of something. You know, let's say someone that shops, maybe as a child they didn't have quite as much as, you know, other kids did, and maybe other kids teased them, so they were in a position where, well, I make quite a bit of money, or sometimes the other, scenario where they have a credit card and run themselves into debt. Either way, maybe that's the thing. Or you can also have a complete opposite where maybe they've never went without, therefore they're always shopping because, well, when they were young, their parents were well off and rich and they were able to always have everything new, and whether they can afford it or not, they hold on to that lifestyle. It's kind of like a addictive lifestyle. But and trauma, you know, usually does lead to dopamine. And you know, there's people that they skydive or they go on roller coasters all the time because they need that rush. They need to feel that rush. That dopamine, that adrenaline rush, and, getting, parts of their brain to trigger that they don't get without having that. Now me, roller coasters, I can go on them, but I'd rather not. They're not fun for me. I don't get a kick out of them. I guess I'm more of I'd rather go hiking or, climbing or fishing or, other things. Roller coasters, definitely not me. But everybody has some type of addiction. I have addiction to being outdoors. I mean, winters. I hate winters because I hate cold, but I love being outdoors. I love the summertime. I just want to be outside all the time. But, there are so many types of addictions, and they usually, anything in your life really has some type of, effect from your past. It's a side effect from something that happened when you were younger. So, he's exactly right on that. And we do have a lack of compassion if we have a war on drugs. These people don't seek, or, these people don't get help. The government doesn't go, let's see how we can help them. Their answer is just locking them up with other criminals. Oh yeah, you smoke pot? Well, we'll put you in here in this prison with the, guy that, murdered a whole bunch of people. Or the guy that, burned a whole bunch of people's houses down, or, it's kind of, we have a complete lack of compassion. It's okay, but that's cool. We'll get through this, fight and be proven right every time that the war on drugs is a failure, will always remain a failure, because prohibition doesn't work. It does the opposite of what they claim it will do. And I really think the powers to be, they know that. They absolutely know that. And they benefit off of it. Their pockets get bigger off of it. And, well, private prisons all over America. Look at our, prison rate. It's fine. We'll prove them wrong every time. And thanks to JJ for, playing that clip for me. Much appreciation. And I know he had, a prior, interview going on with someone, so, he definitely did me a pretty big favor there. And JJ, I'll get you back anytime you need it. I got a few different articles I want to cover. And one is a kind of breaking story. Excuse me there. I think I have two sources here. Yep. Okay. I have one out of, the Libertarian Republic and one out of benswan.com. Just happen to have both of them up here. Didn't realize I opened them up from two different ones. First one from Libertarian Republic. Gun grabbing California senator nabbed in gun running, sting. Wild West guns, drugs, bribes, and California politics. Democrat, state senator Leland Yee of California has been arrested for facilitating gun running from the Philippines in exchange for campaign contributions. Leland, a longtime gun control proponent, is also being charged with selling legislative influence. Authorities allege that Yi is one part of a large investigation involving organized crime, gun trafficking, drugs, bribes, and contracted murder. While corruption and hypocrisy from lawmakers is common occurrence, Yi has taken it to a new level. The activities in the criminal complaint detail organized crime being run out of a prominent California legislator's office. Yi has been instrumental in limiting California residents' Second Amendment rights. It appears that for the right price, however, Yi would personally hook you up with his Philippine gun-running connection. And I'm going to pop over here to Ben Swan. See if we have any other stuff here. Says this revelation on benswan.com. This revelation could end the political career of well-known Democrat leader Darrell Steinberg. Called on Yi to resign or face swift action by state senate. We're going to demand that Leland Yi, yes, innocent until proven guilty, leave the Senate and leave it now, Steinberg said at a news conference in his office where he was joined by 14 fellow Democratic senators. According to the incident, Yi and Jackson defrauded citizens of honest service and were involved in a scheme to traffic firearms in exchange for thousands in campaign donations to the senator. And this clip should play fine because it's not from YouTube. Let me test it out. If it doesn't, that'll be fine. And this is a clip, ironically, Yi has been fighting for more gun control in California. And it says see video below, and that's the video I'm going to play here. Be able to hear the audio.
California's strict gun control law is under fire as a result of a CBS 5 investigation. We looked into a device they call the bullet button. It makes an AR-15 or AK-47 type gun legal in this state. The debate has the state's top cop dodging our questions and one lawmaker getting racist threats. From billboards to merchandise, the attack on Senator Leland Yi's gun control bill, SB 249, is organized and vicious.
I see you're from communist China. Go back to China. We love America.
There are many individuals in the state and in this country that looks to the bill that I am carrying as really un-American. And I would tell you that I am probably as American as anyone else.
Senator Yi introduced the bill after seeing a CBS 5 report that showed people at the range firing semi-automatic rifles despite California's law that bans assault weapons.
I think the reason why I am committed to this particular bill is because of what I saw on your TV station, the story that you did.
We discovered it all came down to this.
Well, I guess, that audio didn't play clear, but basically, you have this corrupt innocent until proven guilty, which we know most politicians are corrupt. That's a basic given. But the same guy that's telling you can't have guns is gun running. And, there's talk about, murder for hire and, a lot of different things connected. And it's real, it's a real wake up call for people. You have politicians that are literally doing things like this. And if it's not with guns, it's with your money or, our nation's resources or, you as a person. So, it definitely, it's definitely, a deal where you're going to be screwed. They're going to be exempt and they're going to have all the guns. Do you really want corrupt people with the guns? Or would you rather everybody have a gun? And I think most people have a pretty clear understanding that, most people still have humanity in them a little bit. A lot of times we make up this thing where, well, all these people buy into a system. If you give those people a gun, they'll just shoot anybody. And I don't think that's the deal, because a lot of these people, well, a lot of the reason that they're, anti-gun or, don't like being around guns, there's usually two things. They've never been around guns, or they've had a bad experience around a gun, or with a gun. Those are usually the two things you find out. The only time they've ever been around a gun, it was a bad experience. Or they've just never been around a gun and they see too many movies. Everything that they see about a gun comes from TV and makes guns look pretty evil. I've seen people that weren't comfortable with guns. But after they seen that Obama was kind of going after guns, and they kind of they were like, you know what, I'm going to get a gun. I'm going to learn how to shoot a gun. I'm going to get one before they're outlawed. I'll bury that thing. I don't feel comfortable with not having the ability to get one if I need one. It was kind of amazing watching some people that they weren't anti-gun, but they were basically afraid of guns. Completely just come out of their shell. And it wasn't the fear that they were going to get robbed. It was a fear that their choice to have the right tool to defend themselves would be abridged. That right to use whatever means necessary to defend yourself from criminal actions from others, that right would be taken away because, well, the criminals don't obey laws. So more than likely, they'll still have a gun. What they do is they make legit people criminals when they pass laws like that. Because, well, the American spirit would say, no, I'm not obeying an unconstitutional law or a law that abridges my rights if you're not even a constitutionalist. Just a law that abridges my rights. That's not, adherent to natural law. That's, man-made law. That's human law. That's, tyrannical governments. There was a video. I wish I knew where that video came from because let's see if JJ could play it. It was let me see if I can find it here. Because, yeah, here it is. And this was a veteran out of Connecticut. And let me get this over to JJ. Bring him back in. Let me see how I bring him back in. Okay. But it's a Connecticut veteran, and he's at a, I believe it's a town hall, but he's basically calling them out, telling them that these are unconstitutional gun laws, that he will not comply. And, you know, he really calls out their BS in what they were saying, how they were trying to defend themselves and trying to, basically reword things. Let me see if JJ is ready. I'll bring him in if he is. Maybe. But, when you start seeing people like this stand up, what the media wants to do is make these people look crazy, make them look like they're just some radical. Well, when you start questioning the status quo, you are in a way being radical. When the majority of the populace just goes along with the status quo. They don't question. They don't think. At least for themselves. They think about what they're being told to do. And how to do that successfully. No matter what it is. And that's really what it seems like. And if you look at history, it shows that, well, that's absolutely true. That when you get a real just passive group of people that just go along with the status quo, they can kill off hundreds of thousands of people. It's happened all around the world. It really has. And a lot of times when you create these monopolies of force, when you create these groups of force, you attract some of the sickest people, really. Doesn't seem like that when you see these corrupt groups that have a monopoly on force, and they're evidently corrupt. When you see multiple YouTubes and multiple articles and local station picking up, you know, stories about these police departments, and when you see innocent people shot by cops when they're not fighting back, they're not doing anything that's going to immediately harm anyone. and they're either killed or beat up. There's articles that I've seen lately of a new, I wish I knew exactly where that was, but basically of, more, wrong home raids. You start seeing more raids on homes that, wrong home. I just flashbanged you, probably shot your dog. I'm not saying that that's what happened in this latest one that I seen, but it seems to be the truth. Oops, broke down your door, flashbanged you, shot your dog in front of your little kid, and they're traumatized. And then you think about, things that Stefan Molyneux was talking about, traumas that happen in little kids' lives. It affects them. And when it's coming from the people that, well, public schools like to tell you, these are the people you should trust. Yes, your parents love you, but they're not smart, so you should trust the government. As the government's some superhuman entity that once you become a government person, you get superpowers and know everything. When they're just as flawed as the next person. And even a lot of educated people are flawed in the way they perceive things. And a lot of times you see a lot of the extremely educated people. And, this was one of my criticisms about homeschooling way back in the day. And it was that not enough social interacting with some of the homeschoolers that you do get in a schooling setting. And sometimes you see extremely smart people that are antisocial, so their brilliance is not anywhere, intertwined with looking out for the next person, because they could give a crap about the next person. Again, Larry Page, which I talked about coming out of Business Insider, said he would rather give his billions to Elon Musk than charity. He'd rather give it to a company, a capitalist, than give it to charity because of the future. What the future could provide. These people might have great visions for the future, but they don't have an interaction with the present, with the people that are currently here, the people that have to suffer the consequences. Yeah, the success, but also the consequences from what Google's doing, for sure. This is the CEO of Google that has bought Boston Dynamics, which is contracted with the government and DARPA, working with artificial intelligence, who needs NSA to collect your data when Google has some of the biggest collections on data. But they do no evil. And I'm listening to two of the guys talking to Glenn Beck. I watched that interview. And I'm real kind of interested in Google right now. I think there's some real creepy crap going on over at Google. I don't think for the majority of them that they have a real connection with the social interactions of people. They don't have really a clear outlook for the people that are here right now, because they're so focused on the future. And since they're not super social type people, which is what I've really seen. I seen, the interview with, Glenn Beck that I seen with, I forget their names right off bat, my mind's drawing a blank, but, just their body language seemed to convince me that, you know, they're very uncomfortable. And I can see that, you know. I'm not a very, very extremely outgoing, grab your attention type person, but I'm also not antisocial. I think these people are just uncomfortable around others. You know, they can't deal with others. And even, you know, us as a society have gotten that way. You don't see neighbors getting together all the time anymore. You don't see neighborhoods throwing little block parties and getting to know each other. It's peek over the fence and peek through your blinds at your neighbors, see what they're doing, be nosy. Oh, I think my neighbor in the apartment has a dog and they're not supposed to have a dog. I'm going to kind of spy on them. I think they have a dog. Has that dog done anything to you, even if they did have a dog? We honestly have a society that's real, antisocial in a way. And, you know, that's one thing that I try to break, you know. Changing yourself is also changing society, and I think your interactions in society, are the biggest impact out of everything. Okay, give me a second here. I had another one here. Hopefully it pops up right. Okay, here we go. Congressman, president's push to end data collection will actually increase collections. That's where, you know, we're talking about Google and collections. And, this recent, push by the president, to end data collection. Oh yeah, he's going to end data collection, you know, clap your hands. It says here, just by reading the name, the average American would believe that a new bill being crafted by the Obama administration to end an NSA data collection, or a simultaneous effort being pushed through the House Intelligence Committee by Representative Mike Rogers, would lead to the end of data collection on hundreds of millions of Americans. After all, these bills with names like "and bulk data collection" sound like they will free the American people from NSA spying. Newspaper, television, and internet story headlines read, White House plan with NSA's bulk collection of Americans' phone data. Sounds like the NSA spying program is coming to an end. Not so, says Michigan Congressman Justin Allmash, who voted against the House version of the end bulk collection bill. Allmash, a Republican two-term congressman, was a guest on the Ben Swan radio Wednesday. He says the bill sounds like it will lead to the end of data collection, but when you get into the details, the bill could actually expand collection. Here's a quote. It actually expands the scope of collection of unconstitutional collection. It is called the End Bulk Collection Act. It's like we're in some dystopian future. Government calls a bill something that has the opposite effect. Well, this is what government always does. Affordable Care Act, is it really affordable? Patriot Act, is it really patriotic? You just on and on and on. The major point brought up by Congressman is that despite the name and bulk collection, the bill does not end collection of data. Rather, it shifts the responsibility collection from the NSA to private phone companies. they're going to transfer where the phone data is collected so that is not stored by the government, but is instead stored by the phone companies. Where it is stored is not really the main problem. Congressman Almash goes on to say that by correcting who is storing the information does not resolve the constitutionality of bulk collection of data. The problem is the unconstitutional search and seizure of people's information, even if it's stored about the phone companies. The phone companies are now acting as agents of the government and provide the government even more information they have today. That doesn't put us in better position. It puts us in worse position. And you can read the rest of that at benswan.com. And that, that's the thing that, by doing that, it would basically be forcing, by putting a responsibility on the phone companies to collect the data. So then the phone company can't go, hey, we offer a service where we don't collect your data. Well, no, because, they would have a responsibility to hold bulk metadata. So, he's exactly right. It does nothing. It does nothing. And it really kind of makes it more intrusive because then you as a consumer don't have a choice to try to seek a different outlet that doesn't collect data. And that would be after fighting so hard to try to, cover the individual's right to privacy. It's really sad. I have, one here, and this is something that all the citizen journalists, all the independent media, everybody should really be worried about. And this is the media shield law. That would basically take, it does the opposite of what they say it's going to do. It says, media shield law. Well, you would think, well, I'm a journalist or independent journalist or, independent journalistic outlet or any of that. Well, that would shield me. Well, actually what it would do is take the shielding off of you because right now, independent journalists are journalists and there's shield laws that protect, their right to privacy and they don't have to give up their sources and all that. Well, it's basically been exposed that that's not what the shield law will do. And right here from Ben Swan, Senator admits rural journalists won't be covered by media shield law. So let me cue this up. Hopefully this works. I usually have pretty good luck with Ben Swan playing audio from him, so hopefully. Give me a second here while it's loading. Hopefully it'll come through. Let me know in the chat. Okay. Audio problem here. Not sure what's going on. Just weird crap going on with, I don't know. It's almost like someone's purposely doing it. But I have no proof, so. Chuck Schumer basically admits it, and there is no transcript here. But, yeah. Basically, independent. Anybody that's not hired by a large corporate entity that's controlled by the state. So, unless you're state-controlled media, you're not going to be exempt. And we're telling Russia what to do. We're telling Russia what to do when we're doing exactly. Well, actually, hold on. No, we're not. We're not doing exactly what Russia's doing. We are, maybe when it comes to the laws they're trying to pass for media. But hold on. I don't think Russia has as many bases around the world as we do. Yeah, I don't think they do. I'm sure they're not in as many countries as we are, not as many bases. I'm pretty sure that we're heading down an even worse road than Russia. Oh, they get our guns? Yeah. They're going after every right you have. Rights that aren't even outlined in, the Constitution, which a lot of constitutionalists don't ever want to talk about it in that light, but that's what it is. Parental rights. Not outlined in the Constitution exactly as parental rights. So we're having everything stripped away. Usually that's a sign of things to come. That's usually what happens in the death throes of a failing country, a failing empire. When things start getting bad, they have to go after your rights. Because they have to be corrupt to try to be the last survivors. And that's really what I see it as. You know, every civilization that has grown into an empire has collapsed. And we seem to have not learned from that. And when I mean empire, that means when you've expanded your governmental reach beyond your borders, which we have. When we can go, oh, you know, Gaddafi, you're being bad over there in Libya, so we're going to drop some bombs on you. It's humanitarian, you know. We have to take out that pipeline that's feeding water to your farmers that you spent all that money on to give your farmers water to grow food for your country. Because that will help the people of Libya. Right. And that's not the people of America. Those are the people in control of the government of America. Most people of America be like, what do you mean we bombed the water pipeline that feeds farmers? Why? No, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. I thought we were supposed to be helping the people there. Oh, now we have to give a whole bunch of food aid to them too? Because that's usually what follows. Now we have to, feed them because they don't have fertile land to grow their farm. Well, yeah, because you wiped it out. You would think that'd be something that they would try to save. You think that's somewhere that they would try to keep Gaddafi from trying to maybe destroy, if he's such a bad dictator. Because, well, bad dictators will, in a death throw of a failing government or empire, usually destroys its infrastructure on the way down. A lot of people claim that's, what happens when you see business leave America is you're seeing the destruction of your infrastructure. Whether it be means of just business people leaving the country or government regulating business out of the country. You come into so many issues with that. Let me get some other articles here up. I have one here out of, it's not one of my favorite sites, but I've said before, I check out multiple different websites, different sources. This one came from Collective Evolution. But this had to do with, breaking the set with, Abby Martin. And it's former World Bank Senior Counsel says a second species on Earth controls money and religion. I'm going to read this here. Former World Bank Senior Counsel Karen Hudes, Hudes, has been making a lot of noise lately, and she's recently said something she's never said before. She said that a second species on Earth controls money and religion. Many people who have held positions to know things that the rest of us might not know have made some very shocking statements lately. For example, Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of National Defense, recently said that there are at least 4 known alien species that have been visiting Earth. No, I'm not someone that believes in all this, but I had to read this because it was something that went across RT, and I don't know, I'll let you make the decisions for yourself, but it says here that they have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, and that was again former Canadian Minister of National Defense. It says here, I am aware that just because somebody says something does not mean that it's true, no matter what their background. At the same time, what she says corroborates with a lot of ancient historical facts and modern day disclosures of other strange phenomena, like UFOs, secret societies, and more. For someone like this to gain credibility as a World Bank whistleblower and then all of a sudden make a comment like this is quite shocking. Although in her interview she did discredit the idea of extraterrestrials on the planet, which I definitely disagree with. This is an enormous amount of evidence out there that suggests we are not alone, and we have indeed been visited. Again, I don't agree with all this, but this is a quote, these countries are not monolithical. They are forces fighting the corruption, and are forces that have totally been co-opted. And the way they act is treasonous to the people in those countries. The group that's behind the network of control are the Jesuits, and they are also some groups behind them. One of these groups are the hominids. They are not human beings. They are very smart. They are not creative. They are mathematical. They had a much longer force in the earlier ice age. They have elongated skulls. They might produce offspring in mating with female humans, but the offspring is not fertile. We live in a world of secret societies and secrets, and the information that ought to be public is not public. So that's what she said on RT. It says here, Karen held her senior position at the World Bank for 12 years before deciding to blow the whistle on the World Bank and corruption within it. She studies law at Yale Law School and economics at the University of Amsterdam. She worked in the U.S. Export-Import Bank of the U.S. from 1980-1985 and in the legal department of the World Bank from 1986 to 2007. She established the non-governmental organization committee of the International Law Section of the American Bar Association and the Committee on Multilateralism and the Accountability of International Organizations of the American Branch of the International Law Association. Wow. But that's who she claims to have done it. Hope you guys don't lose audio still. Let me know if I'm coming in clear. Shouldn't have lost audio. Should be good. Let me know again in the chat. But, apparently that's what she said on RT, on Breaking the Set. And, this is someone that has held lots of credibility with many people. And, it just, it's kind of odd. I really think it is a little odd that she would take that credibility and just throw it away. And I'm seeing if I'm coming through, and it doesn't seem like I am. Trying to find out from you guys in the chat room. Because I'm connected. My mic's turned up. All the correct buttons are pushed, and apparently nothing. Not sure what's going on here. Okay, let's see if this is going to work. I got the audio playing in the background, so if I pop on, I'll know. And so far, nothing. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Okay, apparently someone can hear me. I'm trying to play the audio here and I'm not hearing anything playing back. Okay, it's one of those things that, there's just been some, it's one of those things that it's getting a little out of control almost. It seems that we have such large collection of data going on everybody. Which, why ask for your papers when they have you on a tracker? You don't need an ankle bracelet. A lot of us are on trackers. Well, when they got such free access to it, when they're able to regulate that, well, companies that provide a product like that must keep all the data on it. That way, if we decide we want to spy on one of our citizens, we can do it. Well, you know what, Josh, those citizens could be terrorists, and yeah, so can the government. Which governments usually have better track records of, committing terrorist acts. I'm sorry, but that's what history's proven. They tend to do a lot more terrorizing than an individual. Even though individual terrorizing a community is awful and it's bad, wars that last for years upon years upon years and create a mentality in the society that's under that type of conditions for that long, that's more of a terrorist act. That tends to also create hatred among other countries. Sometimes we can't mind our own damn business because we're so intertwined. Because our currencies are being controlled by the same people. Now, apparently, what's her name? Karen Hughes, former World Bank Senior Counsel, says it's because of the Jesuits and these hominins. hominids, which aren't human beings. And she says they're very smart, but they're not creative. They're mathematical. Well, their math is pretty off if they're being sincere. So, yeah. Okay. One last article I do want to get to, if I can find it here quick, which I should be able to. Actually, there was two articles, and I'm was debating on which one I wanted to do. There was one out of Libertarian Republic that I was going to cover, but I think I'm going to cover this one out of Ben Swan first. And maybe if we have a little bit of time, I might get in something else. Come on, pop up. This one, since we're talking about world governments, is the reason I kind of chose this one for the last article. Out of benswan.com, UN investigator condemns United States rogue drone policy. And this is something, again, being over in other countries. And there's been video that surfaced that when they hear something like a jet, they definitely panic inside, at least, if not literally panicking. A recently released report by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights calls upon the United States and other responsible governments to publicly investigate civilian deaths at the hands of unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones. An investigation by Special Report Ben Emerson examined drone strikes and other forms of remote targeted killings involving Pakistan, Yemen, and the United States and the United Kingdom. Sarah Nucky, the director of the project on extrajudicial executions at NYU School of Law, wrote a summary on the report outlining the conclusions. A special report first presented a interim report to the UN General Assembly in October 2013 discussing government secrecy and detailing the legal obligations of states involved in drone attacks. His work was based on 10 years of research done by previous special reporters. During a recent UN intergovernmental debate about the 2013 reports, many states for the first time voiced their objection to the drone programs and called for reform. The latest report by Ben Emerson examined 30 individual cases in which civilian harm, defined as death, injury, or instances where civilians were put at immediate risk, took place. The cases stem from reports in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and Gaza. Some of the cases are more well known, such as October 2011 strike that killed 16-year-old U.S. citizen Abdurmal Alawaki, and the December 2013 wedding convoy bombing that reportedly killed up to 15 civilians. The report details the possibility of over 300 civilian deaths. According to the United Nations report from 2014, the United States drone program is increasing civilian deaths in foreign nations. The United Nations Instant Assistance Mission in Afghanistan report claims civilian drone deaths in Afghanistan tripled in 2013, resulting in 45 civilian deaths by drone in 2013. UNAMA suggests the total could be higher since there is difficulty in establishing the type of aircraft launching the attack. Violations of international law. The second portion of Emerson's report focuses on legal issues surrounding the United States and allies' decisions to bomb sovereign nations in pursuit of terrorists. The special report states that additional international discussion is needed to remedy legal issues that are subject to disputed interpretation or where the actions challenge established legal norms. Specifically, the special report questions the legality of a state encroaching on territory of another country with the intent to kill a person. Think if this was to happen here. They go, well, there's an American terrorist that's terrorizing this country over here, so we're going to send our unmanned drone over to the United States and, well, it might kill more than, that guy. It might kill everybody on his block, but we'll make sure we get him, and sorry for the inconvenience. Really? Yeah. Says the special report makes 2 recommendations for moving forward on the controversial topic. He calls upon the states involved in the 30 strikes to publicly investigate and explain them. He also recommends the states whose territories are under attack to provide as such information as possible. Emerson's final recommendation is the Human Rights Council to establish a panel of experts to examine the legal issues raised by drones and targeted killings. The report states that governments initiating the attacks are now legally obligated to explain the deaths. Really, they should. And you can read the rest of that at benswan.com. But they really should be. This shouldn't be going on in the first place. Targeting. Well, if you're targeting, then there wouldn't be that many innocent deaths. And again, what if there was American that kept going over to another country, or what if a libertarian or a, liberty lover here in America had a following online, and he talked about, how bad, maybe dictatorship is, and how bad it is, and you should rise up against your government if you have a dictatorship. And that other country starts having attacks by its own people, and they go, well, it's because of that guy over there in America telling them freedom's good. They're trying to rise up against us, so let's send our drone over there. By the way, it doesn't only take out that guy that was spreading liberty, but it also took out the whole block. Would the U.S. be okay with that? Well, if they're going to justify it for themselves, even if they're against it, then it's just making them hypocrites. But then it kind of makes you go, well, maybe they would let that happen. Maybe they really wouldn't care if, drone strikes started happening in the U.S. because, well, you shouldn't have lived near that liberty lover over there. Shouldn't have lived in that neighborhood because there was a liberty lover there. Don't you know those are bad folk? It's amazing. We're living in an upside down world right now. And that was just really weird. But we're living in an upside down world. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV. We have Boiler Room Radio coming up with Jim Funke. Stay tuned. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Take care.